Intermediate access to
So, John, are you in finance?
Yeah, I'm the director of finance and operations. And I work with your house stuff too.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
So funny how that happens during that, especially how that just recently, so I came up with a couple of months. It just hired, I think it was the last week. Most people don't quicker than anybody else. That's a tough job. Poor Terry. Yeah, I call him one of my daily general education specialists. It's also she's really it was rough when he first left. It was like me and a new guy. Luis was the business manager. Rich and stuff. I left him. He was only here.
All right.
I won't be here. I left that. But then I had to straight up grass.
Cool. And this is a 50-minute session.
Very
So we need to- All right. Ready? Good to go?
He's a character.
Well, good morning and welcome to our first breakout session of the day, Learning into Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Again, please silence your cell phones. I'm not going to go through a long introduction of Andre because we just heard it next door. So with that, let's just dive in.
All right, good. We will, again, you have the option of communicating via slide deck if you have questions or anything that come up for you. So I'm going to operate this, and actually, if you guys wouldn't mind, just kind of fill in this hole. It would be helpful. And if people have to leave or take care of their stuff, I'm grown, you're grown, we're good. You know, right? So, but if we do that, that would be helpful. And everyone that wants a handout has one. Is that true? And as people come into the space, we'll adapt to that. So, first I want to start off with any questions from the previous session. So that was like a fire hose open, just blasting stuff out and just kind of letting it all out. Any questions or clarifying points that people would like to hear? Any comments? Off base, right on target? Yes.
This conversation very enlightened little daughter who we talked about lots of things and going on in our country today. And one of the things I always try and talk about is missing poverty and that's great life and we just need to be reaching out. And she makes it one case that mom, there are sufferers that are neo-Nazi or alt-right that unless you're a white man, you think you should do that. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. If it's any effort, they're never going to see it. So just cut that through our report. So, what are your thoughts about that?
Can't afford it. Can't afford it. I don't, so sometimes I use analogies, and I want you to know all analogies are flawed, right? So it's not, they're all flawed. And I don't like comparing people to animals and that kind of stuff, because that has a lot of stuff in it. However, pit bulls were raised for a reason. They have a purpose. Pit bulls were raised, does anyone know why pit bulls were raised? Yeah, why? So that's a side consequence of their original breeding purposes, right? So people did use them to fight, and you can use any animal to fight, actually. I mean, if you train them that way, right? But to help with bulls, to help with the penning of large animals and so forth and so on. And if you look at any kind of so-called vicious animal, and particularly dogs, they're not that way by nature, but they're that way by creation. By context, by training, by development, that kind of stuff, right? Will there be anything, is the earth increasing in size? No, it's not increasing in size. Here's a question, here's a trigger, here's another question. This is a long way to get you to think, but I want to give you some ways to help the have some conversation around it, right? The earth isn't getting any bigger. It's also not getting what? Smaller. So everything that we have is here. There may in fact be cosmic forces that have done all sorts of stuff to encourage life or support life, blah blah blah. But if I'm just a pragmatist, it's us. It's us. So we have to figure out how to solve our problems, because I can't lop off a part of the earth and send it out somewhere with those people. What backs the US dollar? Really? You go to the bank and you take a $100 bill and say, I want my $100 in gold. What will they say to you? No. You won't get a reason, a rationale. You may get a rationale reason, but that's not that's not. Do you know what backs the US dollar? Used to be gold. It is now the full faith and credit. Faith and credit. What is faith? It's belief. Wait a minute. So, do you know why the market tanked the other day? Because the president said something that shook the faith in the United States. Bam! Market tanked. Right? So it's a belief system. So no, I can't afford. I can't afford to let those brothers and sisters go. Is it easy to like somebody who likes you? Yeah, it is. Is it difficult to like somebody who hates you? So I'm not up on all the religions of the world and whatnot, but I do know enough about the major ones that they suggest that people who don't like you, I mean the mainstream part of it, right? There's fringes and all of them, but the mainstream part of it, like people, be good to people even when they're not good to you. And that's hard, right? So my friends on the left, we have to entertain and be kind to the people who are so-called on the right. Because you know what their argument is? You did this to us, so now we're going to do it to you. And guess what the left is saying? You did this to us, so somebody's got to break the chain. Somebody's got to break it. So in our workshop, we're gonna talk about that. Like, how do you actually break that and recognize where we are and what our responsibility, because this diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff is just about solidifying and honoring people's humanity. The boxes and all that stuff is designed. The intention was to secure humanity for folks. It's funny, so somebody was talking the other day about affirmative action and all this other stuff. They're like, well, black people even have their own TV stations. If I had a white TV station, we'd have a problem. And I'm like, wait a minute, let's back up for a second. Why did BET come into existence? Because white stations weren't playing black videos. So black people said, we'll start our own if you won't let us play. But then it gets flipped and says, well, you guys have your own, that's racist. No, the whole intention is for us to have an opportunity to get our humanity honored, right? There are black colleges and universities. People say, well, that's separatism. No, you made us separate. And now that we get something that's working, you're mad, right? But that's because we think we're different and we're backward now. So here's a great example. So I went to a historically black college, right? The label is something that the Department of Education gave the school. The school didn't say we're just a so-called black college. They said we're a college, historically black college because of history and blah, 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 but the department, whatever. I had white people in my school. Oh! At a black college? Yes! Right? Yes, because they said that there's some things that was financially accessible to them, there were things that they can learn, they could get the same degree there as they could someplace else, but it had this label, and so people, whatever, it was just interesting stuff. So I would encourage you, I push that, because that's the sadness of our, if there's a sadness of our current political position, it is that people would rather give up than keep fighting, not even fighting, than having conversations. Okay? So there's a guy in my life, and I don't need to take all this time because we have an agenda, right? But your agenda is more important than my agenda. A guy in my life who, so I was raised, so I've been doing this professionally, I've been doing this kind of work for about 20 years. I have participated in this work, I would say, since my birth, right? So, raised in the kind of household I was, we had these kind of conversations all the time. So there was so in the 90s, I was on this bandwagon of white privilege, which I think is so funny because now people are talking about it like it's something new. And I was like, well, I did that when I was, I had all these conversations when I was a kid. Whatever. But there was a guy so I bought into this thing, and my teaching at the charter school helped me with this too, right? So I had bought into this idea of white privilege as many people oftentimes do. I find problems with white privilege, particularly as I built a relationship with this guy that I kept telling him he had white privilege. He was from Joplin, Missouri. And I don't know if you know about Joplin, Missouri. And he is a part of an ethnic group referred to as Appalachians. So Appalachians were primarily a group, a hodgepodge of kind of Europeans that weren't sophisticated enough to say we're English and we're blah, blah, blah. They're just kind of this hodgepodge and stuff. And many of those folks ended up working in the coal mines, right? So what kind of education do you need to work in the coal mines? You just need to have a strong back, right? So strong back, working class stuff. Coal mining is dirty. It's so all sorts of, and it became a family thing, and so it's from a family of coal miners, and education was, why do you need education when you can work? I mean, education is for those people who can't work, right? From his background. And so I made the mistake one day of saying that he had white privilege. And he was like, show me my white privilege. My people come from the dirt. Like we were less than black, so to speak, right? I mean, we're using that dichotomy. And I really started trying to be a critical thinker because he and I were alive together. And what I found out was that our life experiences were so much alike, but I was creating barriers that kept us from understanding what those are. And right now, that's my brother. I call him, and he's learned a lot, but he's also taught me a lot, and we go back and forth, and the political spectrum is out there, and at one point we were out there on the ends of the spectrum, but now we're in a spectrum called being thoughtful. We vote on people who understand our interests and play to those interests and not play the part. Right? So I encourage you to encourage her. Do not give up, because you can't. And here's an interesting thing, and many of us have probably experienced this in our lives, and like I have, and it took me a while to figure out why, right? So I've been doing this work for a long time, and I have people who are prejudiced, I have people who are bigoted, I have people who are, who think they hate people like me, right? But they keep coming to me. And I'm like, well, you already know what I'm about. Why do you keep calling me, emailing me, wanting to hang out, or commenting on my social media posts? Well, why do you keep doing that? And I thought it was because they wanted to fight me. But then I realized something. When we are sick, where do we go? You go to the doctor. And if you go to the doctor and they're just hold on, I'll be there just what are you gonna say? Shut out. No, you know what? Yeah, I'll be back. No. So we go to the doctor because we actually think that the doctor can help us. Is it possible that those contrary family members, left, right, whatever, could keep engaging us because they want us to convince them of your truth? Don't talk about religion. Don't talk about politics. Don't talk about your family situations, right? What are some of the most important things in our lives that shape how we make decisions? Should we be talking about those things? I'm not saying proselytize. That's where people get like a lot of stuff confused. They said we can't talk about those things. No, you can't proselytize about those things, right? You go to a club, or go hunting or go to an outing. I can talk about my stuff too, right? So no, it's not that we can't talk about it. It's how we talk about it. So I encourage, lean into that stuff. We, as human beings, we cannot afford to lose others. So what I'm saying is, if I cut that person off, will they get better? No, they will be worse because they can't have somebody to lead off of, to balance, to engage with, to have critical thought. One of the things that is, so I'm all over the map, all over my presentation, and I apologize for what you asked. So, but along that same line is the fact that I don't like the fact that we're being manipulated as human beings in a number of different kinds of ways. Right? So what people aren't recognizing is that, or maybe people are recognizing and not sure how to defend themselves about it, with it, or it's just easier to kind of go with the flow. But so there are three parts of our brain, right? And when we talk about kind of this kind of mental construction of the brain itself. So there is so the limbic system is all your nerves, right? So when people have lymphoma, they have cancer in all of the blood vessels and extremities in their bodies, right? So the major arteries and that kind of stuff. So the lymph node system at the top of it is what is known as the reptilian brain. So if I don't like using this term, but it's a term that's commonly used. If someone is in a vegetable state, if they're alive, right, their primal brain is alive. The top of their limbic system is alive. But they're not able to communicate, they're not able to interact with the world, but they are alive, right? So anyone ever think about blinking? No, you don't don't think about it, right? You just automatically blink. Something fast comes to your eye, or something is coming really fast in my eye. I must blink seconds before it hits me, right? You don't do that. Your primal brain is responsible for all survival techniques, and that includes your eyes, right? So babies know how to suckle, we know how to breathe when we're born, we don't think about those things because the limbic brain does that. So it controls all that stuff. It is also looking for, so it's looking for survival. There's two ways to survive. One is to find a mate, so you can survive, the species can survive. And the other is to not die, right? So it's looking for mates and ways that it won't die. So it's constantly in this fight or flight response mode. So it's picking up clues. You're doing it right now, right? So if I do something strange, you'll be like, oh, I'm out of here, right? So I have to stay in the pocket, so I'm going to stay in the pocket. But your brain is looking for that all the time. Then there is the emotional part of the brain that says, how do I feel about what my primal brain is saying? Right? So how do I feel about that? That's where stuff like anxiety kind of comes in, where, and we'll talk about that in just a second too. But then there's the prefrontal cortex, which is the biggest part of the brain that has actually it has less power than the primary part of the brain, right? This is where critical functioning, language, I don't know what color it is, language, decision making, all that stuff is that prefrontal cortex. So the big gray matter that you see in most pictures, right? So what's happening now in our environment is that people aren't appealing to the most complex part. They're appealing to the fear center, right? Danger, everything is danger. I was watching, so one of my favorite dudes now, I guess he's off the air already, but you watch his show and you get so anxious. They're coming for your stuff. They're blah, 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 blah. The thing is going to get you. Prepare. And then right at the commercial break, do you have symptoms of anxiety? Please take, farm all, side effects are, your left eye will bleed, you will, all this stuff, right? So he's creating all this stuff for this market. So part of our task is to recognize that we're being bombarded with that stuff, right? And people aren't blatantly saying these things, but they're saying it in very subtle ways that oftentimes we can't defend, right? So it's just very interesting. So people are appealing to that primal brain and bypassing the cognitive brain. And if we actually thought about some of the arguments that people make about those groups or what, so here's an example. So I'll do this with you. I want you to think, don't say it, but just think about it, right? So I want you to think about a stereotype about a group of people, right? That you've either heard or somebody said, or you may have even seen examples of this. Think of a stereotype. So some of those stereotypes might be this group of people are drunks, this group of people can dance, and this group of people can't jump. Right? So we should just think about whatever stereotype you What I want you to do is to, if you put your hands like this. So you are holding your family tree. I want you to shake that family tree and see if any of those stereotypes fall out of your family tree. Go ahead and shake. Right? So do you have people in your family that are drunks? Do you have people in your family that are that live off the system, that try to live off the system, right? Or take shortcuts? Do you have people in your family that are, whatever the stereotype is? I would imagine that we can find that same stereotype in our own families, right? So we have to be critical in our thinking and recognizing that some of these things aren't the other people thing, but they could be just people things. Like there's somebody in all of these groups all the time, right? But that's not how we want to talk about how we corral people into specific groups. So, long answer. Sorry. Any other things people are thinking about, or we're hoping we might even dive into in our session?
taking a moment, family tree, family constellation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in just a second, right? And maybe that's a segue. Maybe it's a good segue. Thank you. So let's go ahead and grab your handout, and I'll give you just 5 minutes or so. I got to double check my time. I didn't. Does everybody have handouts? You guys have them? No. Do you want? Yeah, you want? All right, so at the bottom of the page, what I'd like you to do is to go back 3 generations. So you would be generation 1, your parents, and then your grandparents. And if you want to go back further, feel free. But if you could just, and if you don't know people's names, that's cool. Just put like their titles or whatever. So I want you to create 3 generations back your family tree. Now, caveat, birth. So you can use birth as the foundation of that. If you're adopted, you can use that as well. So it's not that. If you're grafted into a family, you can use that. And if you created your own family, you can use that as well, right? So, whatever your family constellation is, or your family tree, you can just create that. So as you keep working on your family tree, what I'd like you to do is to put a star and a circle next to people who have been talked about a lot in your family system. So stories are told about them, good or bad. So this person, this parent, grandparent was da 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 da. A check in a does it check in a circle or a star? I said a star and a check, right? A star and a check. So put a star and a check next to anybody who has been talked about a lot in your family. Right? So for good reasons or for bad reasons. So star and a check. All right. So out of those people you started to check, I want you to circle one of them. Circle one of those individuals that your family talked about a lot. I want you to circle one of them. All right. So the person that you circle, what I'd like you to do is to tell me, or just write down what are some words that describe that person. So heroic, or a drunk, or mean, or nice, whatever. So what words are used when people talk about them? What words do they use to describe that person? So those words that are applied to that person, where was that person when those words would be most applicable to them? So when those words would be applied to that person, where were they? Were they in a rural area? Were they in the city? Were they in the United States? Were they outside of the United States? Were they in a war? Where were they when those words that are applied to them would have been applicable? And some of this you might be guessing, so you're not, you don't have to know everything, but I want you to kind of think about, where were they? All right. What I also want you to think about is, what was the time frame? So was it the 1940s, the 1950s, the 60s? What was the time frame that those words would have been applied to that person in terms of where they were? Right? All right. So what I'd like to do now is just have you at your tables share whatever you want about what you recognize about your own family constellation or your family tree. And the person, share whatever you want to share. Don't share what you don't want to share. But I'll give about the average is probably 6 people to a table, so that's 6 minutes, a minute a person. So 6 minutes. All right, so we'll come back in 6 minutes after you have the conversation.
Yeah, she really missed that.
And one was a really good hunter. He was a hard worker person, but he was also drank a lot. It's always inside.
My grandparents on the very well a lot of the old times.
My sister who I said was what my grandparents played on my dad, who made my sister and my dad was deceased, but my dad was very young. 5 years younger. Yeah. Everybody felt sorry for the little child, and she
depending on the emotions of the family
she spent everybody takes care of her, and
from the same person.
who's going to take care of her, she shows and she just kind of couldn't do that. And you give her $1, she spends $2, and then she was me and he's running it. As an example of that, she does nothing wrong, but she's got 17 cats. One dog with the kids in the house. I have pictures of her on the stage.
My grandma never did trust me either.
I don't know. So this has been going on since you.
My grandmother used to make Colombia's with candles. People would say it's like a bad thing since I grew up with it. At one point, you could take, mashed potatoes. Yeah. Then the other day, my wife made mashed potatoes. And usually I make them, and they're really long. And for once a month, not my grandma's, I put them in the
The other groups are a little larger, so.
In the center of your table is a box of cards, but I'd like you to stay if you could, right where you are. But I want to give you another 10 minutes. If you can open up that box of cards. There are questions, and it's really simple. Just pull a question, read it, have everybody answer it. I'll give about another 10 minutes to go through those cards. All right? Cool.
What is your race? Teach me what's in that situation.
What's that?
His students, what got the role there tonight, to worry about. He says he's a player and total number, whatever it is, never once is it pretty much seen just didn't see it. But I thought that was really cool. What did your grandparents do?
My grandmother. This is when I was she got a responsibility. And so her whole thing is you're okay, but you're not okay. You can't really. I don't want to fix My grandma had a problem.
And they wondered why I did.
I did certainly.
Oh,
How does your family handle this? Well,
all right. Stop right where you are. So there are a couple things that I want to talk about. When you're doing your family constellation, and now you're answering these cards, what is coming up? What came up for you through the family constellation or the addressing of some of the questions, those cards per se? Anything come up for folks, or things you've been thinking about? Yes.
With my parents, especially my dad, rationally, he would always talk about race in very much of equality, very kind of liberal in minded sense. And then he would be in a situation where somebody, a black man, would do something that he didn't like, and he would use racial. So he'd be teaching me one thing, but in a moment of reaction, he would go back to something that he was raised in. And so he knew it wasn't right, but at the same time, there's always kind of this weird juxtaposition.
Yeah. I see a lot of people nodding their heads with the story, either agreeing with that as something that they've experienced or being supportive of it. Other things, you know, yes.
Conflict resolution, we're all agreed with it. Resolving is hard. If you don't know the whole, don't know the other person,
Yeah. So leaning into this equity space, diversity space is also listening. What came up for you with cards or for the family tree?
My thing was very interesting that we were going to the park, we found a lot of similarities, values, and family structure, and other things from the
To see those commonalities carry over to other cultures and generations.
One of the things we were just talking about, and I'm carry over from your first one, we were talking about how certain level of family, grandparents had racial comments that were about people who can't tell where did that come from. And then we had a discussion about my grandparents that Japanese change so harder to make entire group of people. So I was go back to that and and then not understanding a couple generations later why that until 9/11 happened. And then trying to not we're talking about how you don't pass along something that happens to your generation to kids and not be that way. You're trying to address it. I can see, I guess I can see where people come from. But maybe because there's one conversation and one awareness.
So I'm curious as to questions you said nobody has answers to.
Well, not really, those
So,
are answers.
so what question was presented that no one has an answer?
Gender ones, you know, what you like, or don't like this,
You don't have an answer to.
The answer is, but it's hard to, it just doesn't roll off the tongue.
I think one of the answers was, somebody said, whether we sort of know it's like, feel like they were, and then
Yeah, the question never said, was it up from head, it says, we left the word gender. I have a point for why I'm harping, right? So here's something that we've been kind of tricked out, right? So if you have a young person who says negative things about themselves all the time, right? That's all they say. I can't do this, or I'm bad at that. Look at me. What would your diagnosis be? And you're not a psychiatrist and you're not a therapist, but what would your diagnosis be? What is ailing you? They have low self-esteem. And what leads you to that conclusion? And they're not saying what? Positive thing, right? Positive. I would suggest that as we look at leaning into the space, part of the thing that we want to fight against is that we can't see the good for us. What is good about my race? When I talk, I ask that question to my students when I talk, right? My African American students have this. My Mexican students have this. My Hmong students have this. My white students said, I'm American. So that's not the question I asked. I asked, what do you like about your, well, I'm American race, so I like the, okay, that's cool, because we're all American. But what do you like about that?
So I had to help them learn how to like themselves. Because what was preventing them from liking other people was the fact that they didn't like themselves, or they didn't feel like that they could be honored in spaces for being themselves. So the natural response is to repel that stuff. So for your daughter who doesn't want to deal with those people who, not that she doesn't want to deal with them, but she's saying just cut them off and stuff. But the part they're cut off is that they've already been told that they don't participate. Their stories aren't valid. Their reality is not valid. So no, bring them into the conversation. Bring them into the conversation. Bring yourself into the conversation. I should be able to listen and trust what I like about being me. This is the only body that I have. And if I can't say what I like about it, then this is just not a very enjoyable existence to me. This is the only one I get, right? So some people can afford to make augmentations and change it. I can't. I'm not in that tax bracket. This is what I got, right? So I encourage you to have answers to those questions. You know, what do I like about my race? Well, I've never thought about it. Bam! That's the beginning of knowledge. Recognizing that we've never had that conversation. What do I like about my gender? Because I know what I don't like. So what do I like? What is enjoyable about being me? Right? So when we lean into that stuff, when we answer those questions, we start to get a sense of a greater sense of our own humanity. I was going to go into some other activities. If you turn to page 4, it's not numbered, but it's after 3 and 4, 5. So, it's this idea of a tolerance scale. And when we're leading or we're dealing with or participating in activities that are diverse in nature, I want us to think about the scale as something. So if you're repulsed, if someone is repulsing you, what kinds of behaviors might you recognize? They're not going to say, I'm repulsed by you. But what kinds of behaviors, what kinds of things might they say or do that let you know that's the message? What's that? If they're rude to other people. What might be a sign that someone is being repulsed, or maybe you are being repulsed by somebody else? Somebody saying, you know, I don't like you, or you're kind of whatever. What are some clear behaviors? If avoid, okay. What else? They don't even, not more than avoid, they don't even acknowledge your existence, right? What else? Well, it might be bullying, right? So these people aren't even people, so let's deal with them, right? Side comment related, but I think it's interesting. Gangs of New York, you guys seen that movie, right? What was the movie about? About the Irish. Yeah, so the Irish fighting some nationalists, right? And why did the Irish have these gangs? Anybody? You've heard of fighting Irish, right? Right? So anybody here Irish? I don't want to. Okay, cool. So can you tell me? So fighting Irish. Who are the Irish fighting? For thousands of years. The English, right? Fighting the English. So fighting Irish, right? Come to the United States and welcoming place in the United States. Hey, welcome Irish. Thank you. We love you. Come join. Did they say that? No. It's the Irish thing. So gangs in Italian mafia is a response to not being part of mainstream culture, right? So creating subcultures. And subcultures have to police themselves and all this other stuff, right? And so MS-13, I think it's interesting because it's very much like the Irish, because we're saying these people, immigrants, don't exist, so let's just let them do their thing, and then they do these things, and then you do those bad things, right? Interesting, repulsion. The next level is avoidance, right? That's pretty obvious, where people say, you know what, they have the right to be here, but I don't have to work with them, right? And then we get to this idea of acceptance, that they have the right to, but I'm not going to go above and beyond my stuff. I'm going to be professional. Right? And then there's this idea of acceptance, which is where the colorblind stuff happens. Tolerance. Tolerance is kind of this kind of professional area. Then there's acceptance, and then ultimately there is appreciation, right? Which is this idea that I appreciate our differences and our commonalities, right? I can, you do you, I do me, and hey, it's all good, right? Oftentimes we try to get into that tolerance place, right? So on a scale of 0 to 100, if I'm being treated with repulsion, so if 100 is maximum efficiency or stuff, and 0 is none, where might I fall if I'm being repulsed? Probably 0, right? If not negative, right? But that was almost, or it is up, right? I left my watch in the car. So there's that. So if I'm being avoided, what am I? 10, 20%, okay. Tolerance. People are tolerating. They're being professional. 50-50, right? All right. Acceptance. They're at least being professional with me. Like, I don't, I'm not feeling any kind of weird stuff, but they're not going out of their way to help me. We're 60 to 70, okay? Cool. What about acceptance? Oh, is that appreciation? I'm sorry, appreciation. 80 to 90%, right? So, we've been taught that tolerance is where we're supposed to be. But tolerance also gives us what kind of results do we get from tolerance? Mediocre. 50%. If your car started 50% of the time, no, 50% is not acceptable, right? But we say that tolerance is where we want to be. So So the underpinning of that is that many of those things, particularly tolerance and below, those things are not. Actually, it's illegal to do those things, to engage people in those ways. There are laws that say you can't do that by putting up a sign saying, keep out, you people keep out, and blah, 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 which is interesting because they're trying to change laws so we can have those things, but that's something that I wrestle with. This is the other thing I wanted to say. So times are changing, right? So things are changing. We got to change with them. We got to understand what those changes are. So, before Brown versus Board of Education, separate but equal, there was a policy that was a separate plus is equal thing. So there were white bathrooms and black bathrooms. How many bathrooms do you think that was? The white bathrooms and black bathrooms. What's that? No. So that's at least 4 bathrooms. And in cases where colored folks had to share the same bathroom, it was 3 bathrooms. How much toilet paper is that? That's a lot of toilet paper. How many moppies? How much cleaning? There's a lot going into the institution of racism. So at some point it had to end just because the market couldn't support. Seriously, think about that, right? I mean, that's a lot of infrastructure, right? So now we have how many bathrooms? 2, male and female. This is what I want you to think about as you leave. And it's a funny thing, but it's also serious. So I want you to think about it, right? There will come a time that the resources cannot support having 2 sets of bathrooms.
I might argue that there's actually 3 on there around the create transgender bathrooms.
Well, I'm going to tell you, there's a time transgender bathrooms will not be an issue. Because we will all use the same bathroom at the same time. No matter how you feel about it, it is going to be a reality. So,
As a woman, I will like that because it won't be mine.
So go to the Saint Stadium. They have doubled the number of women's restrooms to men's restrooms to accommodate that. Right? So my name is Andre Koen. Thank you so much for spending time. Find a phone.